China and the United States have had high-level talks on trade after months of frosty relations. China's negotiator Liu, he spoke to the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on a video call. State media said China raised its concerns on US tariffs and the treatment of Chinese companies. In a separate statement, the US Treasury Secretary said, frankly, they raised issues of concern and said she looked forward to future discussions with the Chinese. Well, for more of those talks, let's bring in Arise US correspondent Eric, who joins us live from Washington. Good to see you, Eric. So, a thaw in frosty relations. The US and China have had high-level contact about trade and economics. Tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. And this comes at a time when U.S. and Chinese relations have been at an all-time low. But what we are now seeing, at least from the statement from the Chinese, is that a more positive tone, at least since the statement that was put out from high-level meetings back in June, where Liu and Secretary Yellen have had a very positive conversation on a range of different issues. And Charles, this comes as we do know that a conference or a summit between President Xi and President Biden is still in the works, although no date and time has been set for when that summit will actually take place.
So, I mean, Eric, can it be said that engagement is picking up again? I mean, after that trade war that was waged by former President Donald Trump?
Well, the Biden administration has kept many of the tariffs in place that were set during the Trump administration on China. In fact, what we have learned is that the Chinese would like to see some of those tariffs removed from the Biden administration. But what we are learning is the Biden administration has continued to resume many of those tariffs and keep them in place. That, of course, has been a source of tension in the relationship between the United States and China. But nevertheless, what we are at least seeing right now is continued talks between high-level government officials. And in fact, this is the second time that these two have met since President Biden was inaugurated. Well, what that means for larger relationships between the two countries remains to be seen, because we do know that particularly China is deeply concerned with the tariffs placed on Chinese technology firms, particularly Huawei, which is one of the largest tech firms in China. And we do know of the prisoner swap that recently took place between the United States, Canada, and China, which of course China was very happy about that. And so while it does appear that there is some thawing of tensions between the relationship, on the substance side, there has not been much movement. And again, remember, with China continuing to show a level of bellicosity or threatening intentions towards Taiwan, that of course continues to place not only the United States but other allies of Taiwan on edge. And so while right now it appears that things are going very well, again, this is a very fraught, very fragile relationship that's taking place right now.
Well, you're absolutely right with that very measured analysis there, Eric. So what happens next? I mean, when can we expect them to meet again?
Well, as of right now, it's unclear when the next round of talks will take place. Also, Charles, while we do know that the major UN Global Summit is forthcoming, in fact, it's expected this week, and we do know that President Biden will be there, we are learning that President Xi will not. And so given that China has been seen as one of the biggest polluters on the global stage, that could be, again, another source of tension between the United States and China. As we know, climate change has become one of the cornerstones of President Biden's agenda. And quite frankly, the Biden administration has been deeply concerned that China has not particularly moved, because we do know that many of the talks between the United States and China, at least on the U.S. side, have focused on trying to implement climate change reductions in carbon emissions, which China has been frustrated with.
Right, well, let's move away from the US and China and their attempts at some form of rapprochement. And let's talk about the US and COVID, America reopening travel, new rules in force. If you're double vaccinated, you're in. America welcoming the world, essentially. Tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. And this comes as Europe has opened to the United States travel since the spring. And so what we're learning, at least from many U.S. airline executives, is that there is pent-up demand for travelers around the world to actually be able to travel to the United States. And now we're seeing some of the requirements that are being put in place by the Biden administration for travel into the United States. Of course, that is at least to be vaccinated. But in addition to being vaccinated, they still are requiring contact tracing and a 3-day quarantine period before travel to the United States. Some exemptions include people ages 18 and under who are traveling with a vaccinated adult. In addition to that, we do know that there are those who are coming from low vaccination countries or low COVID-19 countries that may allow for some exemptions into the United States. And we're told that there are about 50 countries at that level where there still will be allowed to travel into the United States. But again, they need to show a letter why it's urgent that they actually do travel into the United States.
And presumably, Eric, these are vaccines that have either been approved by the US or granted emergency use authorization by the World Health Organization, and therefore people who have those can travel. And I understand the Chinese vaccines are acceptable to the US.
Yeah, that's right. So again, another way for the United States to sort of play nice with China. And you're right, with the vaccines that the United States is actually allowing as acceptable for those to travel and for those to enter into the United States, Charles. And this is something that many are welcoming. In fact, many believe that this could be just the boost that the U.S. economy needs, particularly as the holiday season begins to approach. And of course, there's tremendous demand for many to travel into the U.S.
So, Eric, I mean, I know you're not an immigration officer and you don't sort of usually work at airports, but what will an overseas arrival at a U.S. airport look like under these new measures?
Well, I think what we're going to see, of course, is tremendous accommodations. And of course, this will, I mean, look, the United States has already had the infrastructure in place to allow people to travel into the country. I think what we're going to see now are more planes traveling to the United States from different places across the world. And what that will mean, Charles, is busier airports, of course, longer lines, but also from an economic standpoint, we will see airlines exactly now being able to at least find a way to get back to solvency, particularly given how damaging the pandemic has been, not only for the airlines, but also for the U.S. economy as well.
Okay, Eric, thanks very much indeed. Eric Ham, our US correspondent there, comprehensively looking at not just what appears to be a new rapprochement between China and the United States. They've started talks, trade talks, talks on the economy and all the rest of it, but also talking to us about the US opening up to the rest of the world, COVID restrictions to some extent being lifted, but also being tightened in some circumstances, but America open to the world for travel once again.